What's up, everybody? Pastor Matt here. Thanks for checking into my YouTube channel. Now listen, you can't blame me because I just read Fahrenheit 451, and in addition to that, I just finished watching the Book of Eli. So what I'm going to have to say next about books, just take it with a grain of salt that I'm all hepped up on dystopian fantasy worlds here from the future. But I am getting a little bit concerned about some of the direction that we're heading these days. Now, obviously, I keep kind of track of cancel culture, and I've mentioned this a few times in several of my videos, how I find cancel culture to be increasingly concerning. But just this week, consider this, not only did Gina Carano get kicked off of the Mandalorian series, but we also saw Project Veritas get kicked off of Twitter. And we saw LifeSite News get deplatformed from YouTube. Now, you could take any one of those three and you could say, oh, that's just a rare example. It's just extreme circumstances. Gina Carano said something absolutely stupid. She probably deserved it. Nobody should tweet what she tweeted. Maybe you think Project Veritas is some sort of gotcha journalism. You don't like what they do. You don't like James O'Keefe, their founder. Maybe you think that's the lowest form of journalism there is and that those groups deserve it. I don't think you can say the same thing about LifeSite News on YouTube. But either way, we see this disturbing trend of deplatforming happening in our society. And it's making me wonder, and I'm just going to throw this out there, just for the sake of discussion today, if maybe it's time that we start buying more physical books. So welcome to my channel. My name is Matthew Everhart. I'm the pastor of Gospel Fellowship PCA. We're a Reformed church just north of Pittsburgh. If you're looking for a church like that, you found one, and we're glad to have you. You could come worship with us in real person at some point. But I am getting concerned, and it's about time I broach the subject of the buying of physical copies of books, because what we're seeing across the world, and especially in this nation, is downright disturbing. Let me give you another thing that just happened just this week. You can Google it if you don't believe me. It's so crazy. It sounds like it should be in a dystopian world. But in Australia, in a particular state in Australia, it is now illegal to pray for your child if they are experiencing some sort of gender dysphoria and they're considering transgenderism as a lifestyle. If you pray for them, that is now going to be illegal, apparently. There are some similar things happening in Canada. Of course, all of this is deeply disturbing. I, for one, find cancel culture extremely problematic, and some of you do too. Some of you disagree with me because I know I've posted on this before, and even in the community section of my YouTube channel, some of you have vehemently disagreed with me that there is no such thing as cancel culture, although I'm finding it to be the case that there certainly is such a thing, and I'm worried about the future. Take a book like Robert Gagnon's book on homosexuality. This is the standard book from an academic perspective of what the Bible teaches on homosexuality. How long do you think that book is going to be available on Amazon.com? Can you see that being available 5 years into the future? I'm not sure I can, to be completely honest. Robert Gagnon, if you're not familiar, is a very conservative evangelical scholar, and he wrote the definitive work on Scripture's teaching on homosexuality. In fact, I'm going to link it in the description of this video so you can go on Amazon and buy it before it's gone. But I just can't imagine a book like that being made available, especially through a service like Amazon. Amazon has showed their hand recently, I think, in the whole Parler situation, where Amazon, along with Google and Apple, basically conspired to remove Parler from the interwebs after the Capitol protest riots. And if Amazon is so prone to censoring speech, what is going to happen with this trend in the future? At what point is this trend going to be actually turned back or rolled back? Or can it be? Have we gone already too far in the opposite direction? Now, the problem, of course, is that Amazon is the world's largest distributor of books. Practically every book that I buy, practically every book that you buy is probably from Amazon. I link books to Amazon all the time here on my YouTube channel because it's just the easiest way to get books. In fact, let me ask you this. When is the last time that you literally walked into a brick and mortar bookstore and you went and you actually bought something? Probably it's been a while. There are hardly any Christian bookstores anymore, and even the public libraries are pretty terrible as far as what they have in stock. Just go to your public library, test me on this, and ask for the Christian theology section. See if you can even find one. See if they even have any works on Christian theology anywhere in the library. I don't know about you, but the library from my hometown where I grew up, man, it is all DVDs and videos and media rental and headsets, and people go and they play video games in the library. Where are the books? And the new books, go ask them what their new entries are, and you're going to see the total garbage that libraries are taking in, because they're taking in the lowest, bottom feeder, bottom of the rung type books, because that's what people are checking out. They're not going to have anything like this. Look at this. Here is Louis Berkhof's Systematic Theology, one of the greatest Reformed books, one of the most important Reformed theology books of the 20th century. Go in your public library and see if you can find it. Now, the problem is this book is out of print, and so where are you going to get it? Maybe it's going to jump on Amazon again at some point. Who knows? But how long will it be before Amazon begins to ban or to refuse to sell the kind of works that they don't approve of or appreciate or don't support the narrative? And that's why I'm arguing in this video that even though it sounds totally strange, it sounds like we're living in a dystopian morality. But in fact, what we're finding is that we are. And I am concerned. So anyway, let me give you an overview of the book Fahrenheit 451. That's really what I meant to do here, is make a review of this book, which I just read. It was an incredible book. I absolutely loved Fahrenheit 451, written by Ray Bradbury. I'm not going to give you all the spoilers of this book, but it's a dystopian, futuristic novel. It takes place somewhere in the 21st or 22nd century. It doesn't really say what the date is. Apparently, it's after the Second Civil War. We've only had one Civil War so far in our nation's history, so it's after that. And the key protagonist in the story is a guy named Guy Montag, who is a fireman. Now, you and I think of a fireman as a person who puts out fires, but in Fahrenheit 451, a fireman is actually a person who sets fires, because in this dystopia, all buildings and homes are by this point fireproof, and so what they do is they go around burning books. As the name suggests, 451 is the temperature at which paper burns, and so there's kind of a clever little thing there. But nevertheless, Guy Montag, one night he goes out to do his duty to burn the books. Books have counter-narrative knowledge in them, and so they're considered to be dangerous. Everybody in this world is told that books are backwards, they're harmful, they're opaque, they're not understandable, they're strange, not applicable or relevant. And so they're burning all the books. And one day Guy Montag goes out on duty, and unfortunately there's a widow who refuses to leave her books. And so he and his crew, they burn her as sort of a literary martyr, she is in the book. And in the process of burning her, she has so many books in her house, one of them literally falls into his hands, and you can almost guess which book it is. I'm not going to spoil that for you. You can guess what book it is. One of the most important books in the world, hint, hint. And he goes home and he actually begins to read this book, and he figures out that there's a whole world of important, beautiful, relevant, hidden knowledge that's been shielded from his eyes. Now, along the way, Guy Montag also meets a young heroine, 17-year-old or 16-year-old. She comes off almost as a prophetess in the book. It's simply a young lady, but she asks the kind of questions that provoke deep thinking in Guy Montag. And so even as he's exploring, considering reading a book, and he's listening to these sage questions of this young woman, he begins to think deep thoughts and consider new ideas. And so, without ruining the entire book, he ends up becoming a refugee. Let's just put it this way. He goes on the run. He takes a book, and he ends up becoming part of sort of a countercultural hermitage movement in which a small group of off-the-grid rebels memorize books and take them into their minds by heart, trying to perpetuate knowledge. Now, I can't recommend the movie Book of Eli because it's rated R, and the second I try to recommend any movie, if it has any bad words or bad parts in it, people ding me on that because I'm a pastor. So I don't recommend the movie to you officially. But it's a very similar theme to the Book of Eli. Again, dystopian future story. Books are being banished, and the main character, Denzel Washington, is the protagonist who has secret knowledge that he has memorized in his heart, And again, I won't ruin that movie for you as well. But if you haven't read it already, it's like, hey, or if you haven't seen it already, it's like the movie's been out for years. So that's that's your problem, I suppose. But it got me thinking about this question. Suppose that you and I took this challenge seriously and we bought books. Now, again, listen, smush this video in my face 5 years from now if this doesn't end up becoming relevant. And in fact, I hope that I'm seriously wrong here. I hope Amazon doesn't begin to restrict the kinds of information distribution in the future, although cancel culture and deplatforming certainly suggest that these mega tech companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, they're definitely going in the wrong direction on these issues. But it got me thinking about, what if I had 100 books? What would I take as part of my personal library? What would I want in my collection? So I actually began taking some notes on the 100 books that I love the most, probably different from the list that you might put together if you're going to put together a list. And in fact, I'm going to post the beginnings of this list in the description of this video, so you can toggle down and you can see what I think are the 100 most books that have impacted my life. And not only that, but I'm going to post it on the About page of my my YouTube channel, so you can go look at it as a Google Doc there. Google Doc, there you go. Now, at the moment, I only have about 55, 56 books in my official would-be library if I was going to choose 100. Because I have room for several dozen more. I haven't decided yet what I think are the 100 most important books in my life, and it certainly would be different from any other person's list, but these would be the books that impacted me the most. And so I got thinking about the question, man, what if I devoted my whole life, kind of like Book of Eli, kind of like Fahrenheit 451, to understanding, if not memorizing, but at least understanding 100 of the most significant books in the world? What would I put on my list? And so I began jotting some down, and again, I'll share these with you in the description of this video and on the About page of my YouTube channel. But I'd love to see what you think about my list and what you would put on your list if you were going to contrive such a thing. What should we say about all this? Well, I do think it's important that believers, especially Christian people, own the kinds of books that may be considered illegal paraphernalia in the future. I think we should have these books. I think we should own them, probably physical hard copies as well. Again, you know, my problem with Kindles or even my Google Drive, which I use all the time, is that eventually I'm afraid these big tech companies are simply going to remove the kinds of content that we think we own. A lot of people tell me that they love their Kindle because they can get hundreds of books on there, if not thousands. And while I love the convenience factor of that, in fact, I have a Kindle myself. I buy a lot of these public domain type books for my Kindle, and I just stock it up with things I want to read from time to time. But there's nothing like an actual physical book in my hands. And so I want to begin building this imaginary library. Now, around me right now, I probably have more than 100 books. I probably have 400 books just right here in my study. I don't even know. I've never even added them up before. But this idea of 100 of the most important and significant books, that's really kind of grabbed a hold of my imagination here. And so I'm really thinking about this. So I'd love for you to check out my list, which I'll post in the description and on my About page. But before we do that, let's just consider a couple of these dystopian books. 1984 is the other one. You know, if you've not read Fahrenheit 451, I cannot urge you strongly enough to finally get that book. It's a great read. It's a fantastic read. It's a fast-paced, high-action, all-action book. You're going to love the entire thing. And I'm going to post a link to Fahrenheit 451 in the description of this video so you can get it in physical copy so they can never take it away from you. And get 1984 as well while you're at it. I should have brought Fahrenheit with me, but I left it at home. But you need to get these books because even though I'm not a charismatic, and these books are certainly not prophecy in the sense of a capital P sort of predictive prophecy, nevertheless, one of the scary things about Fahrenheit 451 and 1984 is the way they very accurately depict a one-party socialist communist sort of control over the distribution of information. That's my fear with this deplatforming and cancel culture concept. 1984 has a couple of really valuable ideas. Number one, the idea of the memory hole. In 1984, if something happens that the party doesn't like, it's memory hold and it never comes up again until it's political conveniency to do so. Second of all, 1984 talks about this idea of newspeak. This is the idea that language itself needs to be recalibrated for the one party, one thought, mono-conceptual system of socialistic communism. Again, speaking of newspeak, just the other day I heard that they want to change the word breastfeeding to chest feeding, and from mother's milk to human milk. All of these kinds of radical terminologies, cisgender, gender fluidity, making up terms as we go, adding letters to the acronym LGBTQ plus whatever it is. That's all newspeak, and 1984 predicted this years ago. One more thing too, the idea of the wrong think or the thought crime. That's the idea that ideas themselves should be illegal, and we're seeing this. We're seeing even periodicals like the New York Times calling for more and more censorship. New York Times just recently questioned whether or not any secure communications should even be permissible in order to root out what they think are domestic terrorists and extremists like this. According to whose definition, though? New York Times' definition, I suppose. It's all going in a backwards and scary direction. And so, as extreme as it may seem, maybe it is time, Christian believers, for us to take serious the idea of buying physical copies of our books. Physical copies of the Bible, like the Book of Eli, physical copies of these important books to have in our libraries. At least we could pass them on down to our children and our grandchildren before Amazon takes them away from us. Well, maybe you completely disagree with this video. Maybe I disagree with it. Who knows? Hopefully a couple years from now, you'll say, Everhard, remember that time you ridiculously recommended we buy physical books? Nothing like that ever happened. And if that's the case, I'll be the first one to admit I'm thankful that it didn't happen. But if it does, better buy them while the getting's good. All right, thanks for checking in. Several links to the books mentioned in the description of this video. Go grab them. Also, my 100 best book list. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me what I got right. Let me know in the comment section below. Do love you lots, and we'll talk to you later.